Yeah, hi everyone. So in the last session, I think we have discussed about hierarchical inheritance, hybrid inheritance, and also we discussed about method overriding, abstract classes, abstract methods, and also we have discussed how to implement the abstract methods. So basically, for an abstract class, we cannot create an object, and generally we use abstract classes to define the prototype. So prototype means like whatever the class that want to implement the abstract class or whatever the class that want to extend the abstract class. So the abstract method should be implemented in the child class. So and also we discussed that we cannot create an object for an abstract class, and abstract class supports both concrete methods as well as abstract methods. So today let us discuss about interfaces and what is an interface, how to declare the interface, and we will discuss about read-only properties, optional properties, and implementing the interfaces. So then we'll discuss about inheritance in interfaces like single inheritance, multiple inheritance, and multi-level inheritance. So basically the interfaces are similar to abstract classes, but the major difference is the abstract classes, they support both abstract as well as concrete methods. But with respect to the interfaces, interface purely supports only abstract methods. You cannot create concrete methods in the interfaces. So now what is the purpose of interfaces? So interfaces are used to achieve the multiple inheritance, because in the classes we discussed that multiple inheritance cannot be achieved because of ambiguity problem. But in interfaces you can achieve multiple inheritance. So we'll see that. So using the interfaces you can achieve the full abstraction. So what is mean by abstraction? Abstraction means hiding the details, hiding the implementation. So basically, interface using interfaces, we can achieve the full abstraction. So in the interfaces, it purely allows abstract methods. So interface does not allow any concrete methods. So again, in TypeScript, interfaces can be implemented in two ways. One way is you can directly create an object for the interfaces and you can provide the details. The second way is an interface can be implemented by a class. So today, first let us discuss what is an interface, how to declare the interface, and what is the syntax for declaring the interface. So let me create a folder here. So yeah, so let me create a new folder. Yeah. So now I'm creating a new class. So let us see how to declare the interfaces. So following the syntax of an interface. So first you need to give interface keyword, then give the interface name. So then inside the interface, you need to provide the variables and methods. So here variables can be called as properties. So I can say that we can declare both properties as well as methods. So an interface can contain only properties, or you can declare an interface with only methods, or you can declare both methods as well as properties. So I would say properties and methods. So this is the syntax of an interface. So first give interface keyword, then give the interface name. So inside the interface, you can declare the properties and methods. So now first let us create an interface which has only parameters or properties. So now I'm creating a interface user. So interface, the name of the interface is user. So then inside the interface, you can declare the properties. So I wanted to declare username, which is a string, then age, it is a number. So then I'll declare he is active. Is the user active? So it is of type Boolean. So this is a simple interface. So which has three properties. So the first property is name, which is of type string. The second property is age, which is of type number. Then is active is a Boolean property. So you can assign true or false. So I just created a simple interface user with the three parameters. So now how to create an object for this interface? So I think I can create like this. So I would say constant. Let's say the username is Rajesh. It is of type interface. So interface name is user. So then you can assign the values. So I would say name. So name is Rajesh, let's say. So then I'll assign age. So age is 25, let's say. Then is active. I'll give true. So this is how you can create an object for the interface. So here user is an interface. I'll convert to this to capital user. So this user is an interface. Now I have declared an object Rajesh. So it is of type user. So user is an interface here, and we have assigned the values for the user object. So Rajesh is a type user. User is an interface. Now I am able to assign the values to Rajesh object. So in the same way, you can create multiple objects for the interface. So if I want to access these values from the interface, you can give object name dot variable name. So is, so let me print these values console.log. So is, and I'll print name. So let us print is active. So this is how you can create an object for the interface, and you can access the values of an object. I think this looks similar to an object. I think in the previous sessions we have discussed about the objects. So normal objects. So even objects also we are doing the same thing. So I'm just defining object in this way. So you just give this type. You declare the definition of an object. Then for object you can assign the values. So then what is the difference between the interface and objects? So actually in the you just declare the object type, and based on the object type you can give the properties. But in interfaces what we can do is, so you can create multiple interfaces with the same name. Suppose now what I will do is I'll create one more interface, and here I'll create a function here, because inside the interfaces you can create functions as well. So I'll give is, so I'll give a greet. This is a function. So it is of type string. Say the return type is string. So now the user interface. So we have declared two times. This is one interface. This is one interface. So though you have provided interface two times here, then it will be merged to a single interface. It will have three different variables. That is the different properties: name, age, is active, and greet. So whatever the methods that you have defined in the interface, those must be implemented in the object. So in this case, user Rajesh is of type user and interface. So it has three variables or three properties. For those three properties, we have provided the value. But again, I created one more interface, same name as a user, and I declared one abstract method, greet. So here greet is an abstract method because I'm not giving any body for this. If you don't provide any body, that will be treated as an abstract. So in this case, whatever the method you have declared here, this must be implemented in the object. So in this case, Rajesh is an object of type user. So you must have to implement that. So, but whereas if you go to objects, this is not going to be applicable, because if you declare two different objects with the same name, it will give an error. But with respect to interface, that is not the case. Though you have declared multiple interfaces, different interfaces has different properties and methods, then finally it is going to merge and it will give a single interface. So in this case, so I need to implement the greet function or greet method here. So now let us implement that here. So you must have to initialize instance, whatever the variables you have declared inside the interface, those variables you have to initialize, and also method you have to define. So now let me define body for greet method. So I would say greet. So it is of type string. The return type is a string. Then you can implement the body inside. So I would say return. So this is a user interface. So this is how you can create the interfaces, and this is how you can implement. So here I just created interface with only properties, and here I created an interface with a method. Since both the interface are having the same name, so this will be merged together and you will get a single interface. And here, since this user interface having three variables and one greet method, that must be implemented in the object that you are creating for the interface. So in this case, I am creating an object Rajesh for the user interface. That's the reason we have implemented all the properties and greet method. So now you can access the method here. So I would say Rajesh dot greet. Okay. So now this method will be called. So let me run this. So npx ts code ts node. So it is in src folder interfaces. So yeah. Now I should get name of the Rajesh is active and the greet function should be executed. The greet method. So I think we have executed inheritance. It should be interfaces. So yeah. So it should be interfaces. So now we should give the output. So the name of Rajesh is active and create. So the name is Rajesh, age is 25, is active, true, and the greet method has been executed and it has given the output. So this is the way how you can declare an interface, and this is how you can initialize the values and you can implement the methods inside the interface. So now in the interface, you can have different type of variables like you can declare read-only properties or you can declare optional properties. Even same is applicable for functions. So you can make a function as optional, or you can make the property as variable, or you can make the property as read-only. So now let us discuss how to create read-only properties. So yeah, so let me create a new file. So read-only.ts. So actually, I think we may not use much of these interfaces in your automation, but if you know this concept, this will be helpful when you are debugging the default libraries, or sometimes you may use the interface, but not very frequently. But it would be good to understand like what is interface, how it works. So this will be helpful. So during the interviews, and also it will help you to understand the default implementations of Playwright. So now I'm creating the same interface again. So the same user interface. Yeah. So here name, it is string again, age is number, is active is a boolean. So now I'm going to make is active as optional parameter. Okay. So okay. So we I want to declare read only. So name I wanted to declare as read only. So read only. Okay. So now name is the read only property. So what is the meaning of giving read only? So if you declare a property as read only, so first time you can assign the value. Once the value is assigned, after that you cannot modify the value. So that means once a property or variable is declared as read only, then only for the first time it will accept the assignment value. So after that, if you want to reassign any value, you cannot do that. So it is going to restrict that. So let us try that. So now let me create an object. So, so I'll create an object here. So let me try to create an object. So here I'll give, so name as Rajesh, same thing I'm giving here. So now name I have provided as Rajesh, age is 25, is active is Boolean. So now we know how to access the values. So now I'll try to access name, Rajesh dot name. So I will try to assign some value. Let's say test user. So it will give an error. So let's see what is the error. Cannot assign to name because it is a read-only property. So first time I created an object Rajesh of type user. So now for the first time I was able to assign the values. But when I'm trying to override that value or I'm trying to reassign a value, then it is not allowing because you have declared that as read-only. So that means if you declare a variable as read only, a variable or property, you cannot override the value of that variable. So this is all about read only properties. In the same way, you can create like if I want to make age as read only, you can make that. So depending on the requirement, if you don't want to change the value of a variable, then you can make that as read only. So this is one way. Suppose let's say my requirement is I wanted to make all the properties as read only. Suppose here, if I want to make all as read only, so what I will do? I will declare like this. For each variable, I'm going to provide read only. So in this case, name will be a read only property, age will be a read only, is active is a read only. But instead of this, you can also do read only properties in a single shot. So let us see how we can do that. Instead of providing individually, so let me create a new interface. So I'll create a new interface. The name of the interface is, let's say, product. So the product has following variables: product ID, which is of type number. So then there is a name, so which is of type string. Then there is one more variable, price, which is of type number. Okay. So there are three properties for the product. One is ID, name, and price. So now I wanted to make all these properties as read only. So during the declaration, we can do that. While you assign the values, we can do that directly. So now I would say constant product. So there is an option read only, and you can pass product. So this is product is this interface. So now I'll assign the values. So ID 1, name, let's say laptop, and price, let's say it is 50,000. So now this is you created an interface product. Now for this product, I created an object for this product interface. So for this object, I want to make all the variables or all the properties as read only. So now you can use this read only form, read only type, and you can pass the object here. So I'm creating this product object of type product. So or you can give it different name. So I would say Apple laptop. Okay. So now Apple laptop is an object for the this product interface. Since I used this read only type, then whatever the variables or the property values that you have assigned here, these properties values become read only. So now let me try to assign a value ID equal to 100. I'll give. You will get an error here because you made this as read only. Same way name, I'll give a name as test. So since it is read only, you will get an error. So though you don't define at the interface level, but if you want to make something as read only while you create the object, you can use this read only type and you can pass the interface name here. Then this will become read only object. So it can only store the values, but if you wanted to modify that, it will not allow. But if you want to define at the interface level, you can use this. So here I can use read only. So this is defining at the object level, at the interface level. And if you wanted to do at the object level, you can use this. Okay. So this is all about read-only properties. So read-only means once you declare a property as read-only, you can only assign the value for the first time. So after that, if you want to modify that, you cannot modify. So now let us discuss about optional parameters. So interface, optional properties. Yeah, we usually call this as properties. So now, so yeah, let us take the same case. So I think we are already aware of optional parameters in the methods and in tuples. How you can declare a property as optional? You can simply use question mark here. So whenever you declare the question mark, then that property will be considered as optional. So that means, so generally, if you don't define as optional, then it is mandatory to assign the values for all these properties. I think earlier we already discussed it here. So since here user has three properties, now whenever you are creating an object for this user interface, you must have to assign the values for all the three properties. If you don't assign, you will get an error. But now, if I want to make something as optional, suppose in this case, is active, I want to make this as optional because I don't want to give is active flag always. Every time I want to give only name and is, but is active, this is an optional for me. So sometimes if required, I will give. If not, I'll ignore that. So you can simply use this question mark to make this property as optional. So now I'll create an object. So let Rajesh of type user. So now let us assign the values. So name, so I'll give as Rajesh. So and age, let's say 35. So now I'm not getting error here because you provided is active as optional. Since though you did not provide here, we did not get an error because that is optional property. So let me create one more, Rakesh. So now here I'll declare is active. So I'll provide true. Okay. So this is how you can declare optional parameters. If you declare something as optional, then the interface will not give any error while you create an object and if you don't provide the value for optional parameter. So this is how you can declare optional parameters in the interfaces. And one more thing. So generally for the interfaces, you cannot create an object using new keyword. So generally how you create an object for a class. So I will create like this. Let object name equal to new class name. So this is how you generally create an object for a class, but for interfaces, you cannot create an object like this directly. But you can create an object like this. Here you are giving the interface type and creating an object like this and assigning the value. But if you wanted to create an object for an interface like you do for a class, that is not possible. You cannot create this directly, but you can make use of implementation classes and you create an object. Well, we'll discuss that. So this is about a generic way of declaring the interfaces, and we have seen how to declare the interface, how to assign the values for the properties, and how to create the methods, and how to implement the method. Then we discussed about read-only properties and optional properties. So this is one way of declaring the interfaces and implementing or creating the object. So now apart from this, you can also implement an interface using a class. So in TypeScript, either you can create an object directly for the interface like this or interface can be implemented. So now why should we use an interface and how to implement that with the help of class? Suppose I'll take one example. If you take any bank, every bank will have some common methods. Suppose bank is an interface, so which will provide you only the methods, abstract methods or properties. Suppose if I take Axis Bank has the functionality like send money, receive money, and savings, fixed deposit. Like that, it has some functionalities. Again, if I go to the HDFC Bank, that will also have the same functionalities. any other bank, if you go to any bank, these are like common functionalities that an interface should, a class should have. That means generally you can create a bank interface. So the interface is like a prototype. If someone wants to use the interface, then they must have to implement these properties, or they must have to implement these functionalities. So it is similar to abstract class. I think yesterday we discussed the same thing for the abstract class, because even abstract class is used to create the prototypes. Then the abstract methods can be implemented in the child class. But if you come to the interfaces purely supports abstract methods. In abstract classes, you have to use a keyword abstract, then you have to declare the abstract method. And abstract class can have both abstract methods and concrete methods. But interface is not like that. Interface purely accepts the abstract methods. You cannot create concrete methods in the interface. So let us see how we can create an interface and how to implement that. So now let me create a new interface. So interface, so implementation .ts. So now I'm creating an interface here. The interface name is bank. Okay. So interface is like a prototype. So I'll declare a variable bank name, which is of type string, and declare the common methods that you can see that any implementation class to implement. So generally, if you take a bank, so bank is a prototype. It can have many methods like send money, receive money, savings account. Like that, you can have so many functionalities for a bank interface. So if someone want to implement this bank interface, they must have to implement these features. If the class contains these features, then only we call that as a bank. So that's the reason. Generally, to define the prototypes, we must have to use the interfaces. And if you want to use partial prototype, then you have to go for abstract classes. So now I'll create a method send money. So this is an abstract method. So give void. So this is the method name. This is the return type. So same way I can create one more method. So receive money. So this is one more method. Again, you can have like this multiple methods. So now here, bank is an interface. It has one variable string, which is a bank name, and it has two functionalities, send money and receive money. So now I want to create a class Axis Bank implements bank. Okay. So bank is an interface. A class should implement an interface. So in this case, bank is an interface and Axis Bank is a class. So Axis Bank should implement the bank interface. So now, whenever a class is implementing an interface, then whatever the abstract methods that are available in the interface, all those abstract methods must be implemented. So now, so we need to implement these two methods. That is mandatory to implement the abstract methods. So here in the interfaces, you don't need to declare the abstract keyword. By default, whatever the methods that you declare inside an interface, those will be considered as abstract. So now I'm implementing the body here. So send money from Axis Bank. So this is the implementation of send money for Axis Bank class. In the same way, I'll create one more. So receive money. So I would say receive money from Axis Bank. And now I have implemented both the methods, but why I'm still getting an error? Because you did not assign a value for the bank name. So all the variables and all the properties and methods should be implemented. So now I'll assign a value here, bank name, type string. So I'll give the name as Axis Bank. Okay. So this is how you can implement an interface. So an interface should be implemented by a class. So in TypeScript, you can also directly create an object for the interface and assign the values. That is one way. The other way is an interface can be implemented by a class. So here, Axis Bank is a class which is implementing the bank interface. So in the same way, an interface can be implemented by any number of classes because interface simply contains the prototype. That prototype can be implemented by any class based on the requirement. So now I'll create one more class here. So HDFC Bank. So again here you have to write the body specific to HDFC. So I'll give the name as HDFC Bank. So receive money, send money from HDFC and receive money from HDFC. So here whenever I say implements, so whatever the variables or properties or methods will be coming to your implementation class. Implementation class should implement this. Apart from this, if you wanted to have any method specific to implementation class, you can have that. So now let me create a method here. So branch name. So let's say I'll print like branch name is uh, head branch is in Hyderabad. So now here, the two methods, send money and receive money, these two came from the abstract class, sorry, from the interface. So you must have to implement them. Apart from these properties and abstract methods, you can also implement your own methods here. So in this case, branch name is the own method of HDFC Bank. So now if I create an object for HDFC Bank, so let me create that. So let HDFC Hyderabad equal to new HDFC. This is how you create an object for the implementation class. Now using implementation class object, you can access properties and methods of both interface as well as your implementation class. So in this case, bank name, it came from the interface and receive money, send money. These two methods came from the interface. Branch name is a method which is specific to your implementation class HDFC. That means so whenever you are using object of implementation class, it will provide you the properties and methods from both interface as well as implementation class. So now I'll do one thing. So instead of creating an object directly for the implementation class, I will do like this. So let HDFC, it is of type interface. So what is the interface name? It is of type bank. So equal to new HDFC Bank. So here, what is the difference between 42 line and 45 line? In the line number 42, you are creating an object for the implementation class and assigning that to HDFC Hyderabad. So this HDFC Hyderabad, it behaves like a implementation class object. So if this is an implementation class object, you have access for both the methods of interface as well as your implementation class. So this will act as a here the bank HDFC. This is for this we have given the type as bank. So bank is an interface, but I am assigning the implementation class object here. For the implementation class object, we have given the implementation class reference. For here, for implementation class object, we have provided the interface reference. So if you create an object like this, you can have access for only the interface properties and methods. So in the interface, we have bank name, receive money and send money. So bank name, so I'll call this HDFC Bank dot send money and HDFC Bank dot receive money. So let me run this. If I run this, here you will actually get the body from the implementation class because in the interface there is no body, but you will get the body from the implementation class. So this is program 4. So let me run this. So you must have to implement the the abstract methods of interface in the implementation class. So if I assign interface reference to implementation class object, so it will behave like an implementation class or the interface object. So here you are assigning interface implementation class object to a reference. So it behaves like a object of implementation class. So here it will behave like a object of interface. So here the same object, new HDFC bank, this is the object of implementation class. It is behaving differently here and behaving differently here. So in this way, if same thing behaves differently at different situation, we call this as polymorphism. So this is runtime polymorphism because I think in the last session we discussed about method overriding. So method overriding is a dynamic polymorphism or runtime polymorphism. The same way this one also. If you assign interface, the implementation class object to interface reference, it will behave like a implementation class object. Here, the same implementation class object is being assigned to interface reference. So this will act as a object of the interface. That means the same object behaving differently here and differently here based on the assignment. So this is called runtime polymorphism or dynamic polymorphism. Why we call this as dynamic polymorphism? Because this will be resolved at the runtime. So if I use the HDFC Hyderabad, what method should be called here? That will be decided during the runtime. Again, if I use HDFC here, actually this should call from the interface because you are using interface reference. So which function or which method needs to be called, which variable needs to be used, this will be decided during the runtime. So that is the reason we call this as runtime polymorphism or dynamic polymorphism. So in TypeScript, method overloading is compile time or static polymorphism. Method overriding is runtime polymorphism. Okay. So yeah, this is all about how to implement a interface. So in the same way, you can implement an interface by n number of implementation classes. Here we did using Axis Bank. Here we did HDFC Bank. In the same way, you can create one more class and that can be implement the interface. Okay, so this is how you can implement an interface. So apart from this, I think in the inheritance session, we discussed that TypeScript classes does not support multiple inheritance. The reason is, what is meant by multiple inheritance? If same class is extending multiple parent classes at the same time, that is called multiple inheritance. I think let us see an example here. So yeah, multiple inheritance means, so let us take one example. Yeah. So now let's say I have a class A extends B comma C. Okay. So now here A is a class, B and C both are two different classes. If the class B, let's say it has the method 1. So method 1 and it has some body. Let's say body is body 1, let's say for this. Now I have another class C. It has same body, so same method 1, but it has body 2. So that means the method 1 is available in class B and class C. Now the moment I say class A extends B comma C, so the methods and properties from B should go to A and C should go to A. Here method 1, both are having the same method 1. But now here the problem is with method body needs to be get to class A. Because here we have body 1, here it is have body 2. So now the compiler is not able to resolve which method to be given to class A. So this is the reason because there is an ambiguity. Both the classes have the same method but with a different body. Then it is not able to resolve which method to be given to class A. So this is because of this reason the TypeScript classes does not support multiple inheritance. But the multiple inheritance can be achieved using the interfaces. Let us see how we can do. So before that, in the interfaces also, there is a single inheritance and multiple inheritance, multi-level, hierarchical. So whatever the inheritance that we have discussed in the classes, same inheritances are available in interfaces. First, let us discuss about single inheritance. So interfaces, so single inheritance. So now what is meant by single inheritance? So let's say I have a class, interface. The interface name is person. So the person interface have name as a string, is, it is a number. So then there is a method greet. So the return type of it is void. So this is one interface. Now I'm creating one more interface, employee. So employee is having empid, which is of type number, and department. Okay. So this is a string. So now let me remove the method. So now person is one interface which has a name, age, and greet. Name and age, these two are properties. Greet is a method. So now there is another interface, employee. It has employee ID, department, but employee is also a person because employee can also have name, age, and it also want greet method. Now what I can do is I would say extends person. So remember that a class can implement the interface, but one interface, another interface can extend. Same way, one class and another class can extend, but an interface should be implemented by a class. So in this case, both are same. So person is an interface, employee is also an interface. Since employee is also a person, whatever the properties and methods are available here, I want to get those to employee as well. So that's the reason I'm giving employee extends person. Now, employee interface will have number, age, greet, and also employee and department. So now I'll try to create an object here, employee of type employee. So if you declare like this, then you have to initialize all these four properties and you need to define the body for greet method. So now you can see name. So I'll give name as a test. So age, let's say 35. Then empid 1000. So department, let's say test. So I have initialized the values for the properties. Now we need to define the greet method. So now we should not give an error.
You are using the comma.
Sorry. Here, oh sorry, it should be, I think it should be of correct type. So it is extending, we are getting here. Okay, this is constant. Yeah, constant. So here you will get everything. So your name, source error, identifier expected. Oh, yeah, this should be equal to. Okay. Yeah, because while you assign the value, we should give equal to. So name we have given test, is, employee ID, department, and greet method should be implemented. Console.log, I'll print as test. Okay. So now if I don't implement any of this, right, I will get an error because employee is actually extending person interface. Person is having these two variables and greet method. So that's the reason, though employee doesn't have them directly, we are getting them from the person interface by using the inheritance. So this is how you can achieve single inheritance in the interfaces. In the same way, let us see how to create a multiple inheritance. So interface. So multiple inheritance. So I think we are already aware of multiple inheritance. Multiple inheritance means a single interface getting properties or methods from multiple interfaces at a time. That is called multiple inheritance. So now the same case I will take. So yeah, I'll redeclare this. So here we have person interface. It has name is, and let's say I'm creating one more interface, job details, or I will give job. So yeah, in the job, we should have EMP ID, let's say. Otherwise, okay, I'll do one thing. So for the job, I'll give only job details or a department I'll provide. Otherwise, I'll give only job name, role name. It is of type string. Okay, so now, so person, it has name, age, and greet function. Job, it has only one variable, that is role name. Now, because employee will have both. Employee is a person, and also employee also can have the job name. So in this case, what I would do is employee extends person comma job. I'll give this. Okay. So now let me create one more method here, greet method. So now I'm not getting any issue here. So here employee extends person comma job. So employee is an interface, is it is extending two interfaces at the same time, person and job. So now in the employee interface, so if you observe here, in the person there is a greet function, in the job also there is a greet function. Now which one will be imported to employee interface? Since there is no body here, then if you get any one thing, that is fine, because in the classes we are facing the issue, because in the classes there is a feasibility of defining the body. Since the two functions are having or two methods are having different body, then there is an ambiguity which went to be imported to the child class. But here we don't have any problem, because here it doesn't have any body, and even in the job interface also it doesn't have any body. Since it doesn't have body in any of the interfaces, then there will be no problem. We can get one function here. So now if you implement the employee constants test employee, so it is of type employee. So yeah, so now here you need to assign the values for name, age, role name, and employee ID, department. Apart from that, you need to implement the greet as well. So because you got all those from the personal job interfaces. So this is called multiple inheritance in the interfaces. So we have discussed about single, and this is multiple. Okay. And there is one more hierarchical inheritance. So hierarchical means if same interface is implemented by multiple classes, that is called hierarchical inheritance. Sorry, it is extended by multiple interfaces. So in this case, if you observe here, employee is extending person interface. In the same way, let's say there is another one. So I'm creating one more interface. Let's say senior manager. The senior manager is also extending the person. So here the same person interface is extended by employee, extended by senior manager. In this way, if multiple interfaces are extending the same interface, we call this as hierarchical. So that means in the TypeScript interfaces, it supports single inheritance, multiple inheritance, multi-level, and hybrid. So what is multi-level inheritance? So multi-level is similar to classes. In the classes, we have class A, B, C. Then we say B extend A. Again, I would say C extend B. Same thing is applicable in the interfaces. So let us take another example for multi-level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance. So now let me create some multiple interfaces. So I would say interface A. This is one interface of with the name A. Oh, it's saving an error. Yeah, so this is interface A. So let's say it has a method greet. It is of type void. So now I'll create one more interface B. So it has greet to function method. So interface C, greet 3. So now I would say B extends A. So if I say B extends A, now interface B will have two methods, greet 1 and greet 2. Now I would say interface C extends B. So now interface C will have three methods here. Greet 1, greet 2 and greet 3. So why we got greet 2 and greet 1 here? Because B is already extending interface A. So B will have two methods, greet 1 and greet 2. Since C is extending B interface, so this will have three functions or three methods. So now I will implement so test of type C. If you provide this, then you need to implement all these three, greet 1, greet 2 and greet 3. So it will ask you to implement all these three methods. Okay. So this is called multi-level inheritance. So let me implement here. So yeah, this is greet 1. So greet 2, greet 3. Okay. Yeah. So this is called multi-level inheritance in the interfaces. So I think today we have discussed about so what is an interface and what is the use of interface. So interfaces are prototypes. You define the structure in the interface and whatever the class that want to implement, you should implement the structure of the interface. Again, we discussed about read-only properties and optional properties in the interfaces. Then we discussed how to implement an interface. So you can implement an interface using a class. An interface can be implemented by any number of classes. Then again, we discussed about single inheritance in the interfaces, multiple, multi-level, and hybrid. Hybrid is nothing but combination of single and multiple. So interface supports multiple inheritance because it doesn't allow any methods with the body. Since interface allows only abstract methods, because of that, we will be able to achieve the multiple inheritance in the interfaces. So in TypeScript classes, you cannot achieve the multiple inheritance, but we can achieve that only in the interfaces. Okay.